So there's a story about St. Francis that I find not entertaining, but at least interesting. He lived during the 12th century, so it's the 1100s. He died in the beginning of the 13th century. And at the very beginning of his ministry, he embarrassed his parents by throwing back the title that he was supposed to inherit and the job as a dealer of fabric. He threw the fabric at his father, and then he went so far as to tear off all of his clothes made from the fabric that his father made, and hurled all that till he was standing there naked in front of everyone in the town square, and he ran into the woods to make his home with the animals. We now have statues of St. Francis in our gardens, but we miss the whole idea if we don't see what it was he just did. He just embarrassed his father. He just pushed away the tradition of all the village. This is in the Middle Ages, the High Middle Ages. And he forsake his name. He did a slap in the face to everybody who lived in that village. And they accused him of being an idiot, a fool. They slandered his name. They told him to go and apologize to his father, and he was adamant that God had spoken to him and that he needed to do something else with his life, and it wasn't be another merchant of cloth. So this story happened probably within the next year. One of the people in the village was fascinated by this behavior and was very impressed that Francis never took any of the insults seriously, that he just still sang to the birds and walked among the woods as if God was smiling at him, and was an object of intense love of God. He didn't appear pious, he appeared honest. He appeared like a hippie in the 60s who's just completely in love with God and doing what he needs to do. So this man was named Bernard, and he invites Francis to come and spend dinner time with him and actually stay the night in his home. He was one of the richest men in Assisi. Assisi is where St. Francis is from. So after dinner, they retire to their rooms. Bernard starts snoring loudly, hoping that Francis thinks he's asleep. And after he snored for a while, Francis pretends to be asleep as well and makes sounds like he's sleeping. I don't know if he snored or not, but he pretended he was asleep as well. When he was convinced that the snoring Bernard really was asleep, he got up out of his bed, stood in the middle of his room with one candle lit, and said, "My God, my God, my God, my God," in Italian, until the sun came up the next morning. All this time, Bernard was peeking in. This was his house after all. He hadn't been snoring real sleep, and watched Francis do this routine all through the night. And rather than think, "My God, this guy's crazy," or taking him to St. Francis and admitting him to the psych ward, he said, "I'll follow you wherever you go." And he became Francis's first follower of the Brothers Minor. So he had this effect on people. We today cannot get our heads around that, and I'm not recommending that any of us become Francis of Assisi, because there was only one. But the idea that the voice of God would speak to us louder than the culture speaks to us, that the voice of God would be so intimate to us, and that's what the reading from Matthew was actually about. When you close the door and go into your room, this is the room. It's your heart. So you can close the door and go into your room in the middle of a crowd at Hannaford's, or while you're standing in line to check through the grocery line. You can listen to your heart and hear the voice of God telling you what it is you hear God telling you, which is, "Oh, beloved child of mine, I adore you." We all hear that, right? Yeah. No, we think what we're hearing is self-criticism or worries or grocery lists or all the, stuff that goes through our heads, and we take it seriously, but that's to our peril if we take those voices seriously. This time of Lent, and today Ash Wednesday, we get to push away all of the noise in our head and ask God, if we were to get still and quiet, are we brave enough to listen to the silence? That's all we have to do. We don't have to take off all our clothes and forfeit our inheritance. We just have to be brave enough to listen to the silence and trust that God is there. We can try a spiritual practice, that is a spiritual practice, to sit in silence. A spiritual practice is something that you all do, but nobody really knows that's what it is you're doing. If you're here at church, this is a practice. You chose to come here tonight. If you have a practice of coming to church, that's your practice. If you say grace over meal, that's your practice. Anytime you stop and say a prayer, anytime you pray for somebody at work, which I'm sure most of us do all the time, somebody says, would you pray for? And we do. That's a practice that we respond to people asking us for help. We put money in some of the beggars' little paper cups when we're in the city. Anything you do that is out of the ordinary that connects you to God's people or that connects you to God yourself is a practice. And if you write it down, what you're already doing, Lent is a time to tune it up. You can say, well, I think I'll try, I don't know, a 5-minute period of sitting in silence. Try something new. I think I've told this story before, but it's one of my favorites, so forgive me if I tell it again. But when I was in the convent of St. Helena, living in the Augusta campus, I decided one Lent that I was going to do a random act of kindness every day, and nobody would know anything about it. If I bragged about it, or if I let it slip that I had done it, it didn't count, and I had to do 2 the next day. Remember this one? I was terrible at it. I realized as I started practicing my random acts of kindness that I wanted people to notice me, and then it wouldn't count if they noticed me. I had to be unknown, which is what the reading was about also, that only God knows what I've done, and that has got to be enough. So I fumbled my way through Lent, but I was fighting it all the time, wanting to say, I'm the one that set the table. Did you notice it's set? I'm the one that brought in the flowers. Did anybody notice? And I didn't, but I felt that urge to, did you notice what I did? And that urge is what we think is God most of the time, that we shine when others notice what we're doing, that we seek attention, that we want someone to praise us, because God knows we don't get a lot of praise for the work we do, usually. Do we, teachers? Do we? No. So, Lent is about polishing up your rule of life or your practice, but especially the intimacy part, and I want to end with this. Nobody can tell you what will bring you closer to God. It might be that you need a walk around the block, and that will be your key to feeling like you're at one with your God. I can't tell you, and you can't tell anybody else, what it is that makes you tick. But God knows what makes you tick, and spending time with that God who loves you and holds you in the palm of his hand or her hand knows what it is that you could do this Lent that would bring you a smidgen closer and give you a little nidge of some more peace in your life. Because that's what Lent's about. Amen.